the insecurity provided by becoming an atheist, right? They lose that sense of connection to the world, connection to society, things that explain reality to them, which they don't really explain, but at least makes them feel good. But the point about the term atheist for a lot of people, like I said, my ex-girlfriend's father, Art, is the label problem. And it's a good point, right? When I define myself, I don't define myself as not a woman, and I don't define myself as not tall, and I don't define myself as not ugly, and I don't define myself as not fashionable, and I don't define myself as not, well, okay, that's not true, but we don't define so why do we define ourselves in the negative for the question of God? And I like the term atheist because I like being provocative. I like being almost offensive to some regard and be like, hey, yeah, that's what I am. I love blowing my students' minds and be like, most of your professors are atheists. Just because they don't say anything, just because they don't talk about it, it's just because most professors are afraid to talk about it because they're teaching. It's a very common practice today, which is called teaching to your evaluation. So you're so concerned with how your students are going to evaluate you that you try to be nice to everyone. Well, seeing that I only have 2 or 3 students that show up at a time right now, like yesterday I had 2 show up, and one has a crush on me, and just one random person or other showed up, I'm pretty okay with those 2 people showing up. I think I got good evaluations yesterday. But back in the States, when people actually came to class, I could see in their eyes, like, what, really? How is that possible? I've never heard this before. I'm like, yeah, because they just won't tell you, but I'm going to tell you that they are. Now, indeed, a lot of older professors are a little bit weak in this as well. But let's get to these tactics, these things you could use to try to get people to grasp this. One of the hardest things people have to do is understand the concept of deep time. People just have so much trouble with this, that it's not thousands of years. We have trouble imagining what $1 million would look like, other than maybe seeing it in movies. But it's hard to picture $1 million anything, let alone 7 million, which is at least the most liberal estimate of how old we are, like where we diverged from chimpanzees, right? As far back as maybe Ardipithecus or the Tumai and Chadensis. Okay? So you can give people this perspective here. Right? And this also deals with a really common problem if you understand the hominid and the anthropoid evolutionary tree. Yeah?
Most people believe that and believe God as well. Reinforcing that does not help.
I'm going to explain why that matters. Because people have a mistaken understanding of evolution called the Great Chain of Being. And they think that it goes like fish, reptiles, mammals, people, angels. Like there's this chain of events. So people say, why are monkeys still around if we evolved from monkeys? And I want to shake these people. Because monkeys that are alive today, they're just as evolved as we are. They're current species, right? We share ancestors with monkeys 12 million years ago, 15 million years ago. That's what this kind of thinking can get. Making people think in this depth, which people don't like to do. They think, oh look, monkeys. Or they think chimpanzees. They say monkeys for chimpanzees. Now, that kills me too. Right? Not the same thing. It drives me mental. Now, I love monkeys, don't get me wrong. But we're not a chimpanzee. Chimpanzees are not us. And to say that chimpanzees would want to become us in any kind of overt manner is to me insulting to the chimpanzee. But it's worse than this, right? Getting people to understand the 7 million problem, that's just a drop in the bucket. Because, as we all know, human beings have been on the planet for a fraction of the time that the planet's been here, right? And people's sense of self-importance is completely disrupted by this, right? This anthropocentric kind of understanding of not only the universe, but of their place in it. This hurts people's feelings. And you have to be able to provide them with kind of calm, rational information like this, fossil record stuff. Like, look at the ontology and the development of animals. Why is it that we find seashells or invertebrates on the top of mountains, for instance? This evidence is harder for them to deal with. And all you can really do is, of course, present it to them. But they need a framework to understand it. Right? So what religion does for a lot of people is it provides them with a framework to understand the world. And what we are asking them to do is to throw that framework out and understand the world in a completely different way. So then it becomes our responsibility as the people who are trying to rob them of their deities to provide this other framework. Right? And that's what some of this stuff is. So while we might be all atheists, our level of understanding of evolution varies. And we need to understand it really, really well, just like the religious person well, they don't understand the Bible very well at all, do they, right? They don't, like Leviticus saying stuff about, gay people, for instance, right? There are gay Christians in America, obviously, right? Like, really? Doesn't it say something bad about doing that? So they have a bad understanding of their own books, but that's not an excuse. We should have a good understanding of our books, right? Our books by Dawkins and Darwin and Dennett and people like that. And Harris, for those of you who went, right? That we don't have free will, for instance, which is fantastic. And that, of course, upsets people, too. It upsets people's illusions that they have some sort of say in the matter, right? Because they have superficial choice, but free will, that's another story. So, this second tactic is something you find if you read a lot of philosophy and science. Hume does this. The philosopher Hume does this. He doesn't tell people there isn't a God. He doesn't say that to them, which, of course, is what I prefer. But he provides them with, essentially, an exercise in thought, like, about probabilities. Like, what's the more probable story? Right? Which requires the fewest amount of assumptions, right? We know that Occam's razor, this is often misunderstood to be the simplest explanation. Well, the simplest explanation is a God made everything, right? That's not what Occam's razor and the principle of parsimony mean. It means the explanation with the fewest assumptions. Well, to create an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-caring asshole, God, that's not simple, right? That requires this extra thing being created. So creationism falls on that kind of Occam's razor. And the Hume exercise would be that. It would be, well, which of these is more likely? Right? Or what's called transpermia, which is the technical term, right? That it's the seed theory, that from another planet, that it came on through a comet or something. You still hear this on physics shows. What's the problem with this explanation? It begs a question. Where did life come from on that? The other planet. Were these Martians in The Simpsons, if you don't watch The Simpsons, where did their life come from? So even if our life on planet Earth is from another planet originally, that original planet had to get it from somewhere.
You're assuming that people would like to reason. They'll just call up the faith card.
Yes, and this is some of the tactics we'll talk about later are ways of getting around that problem. I haven't as an illusion, I started with a joke. That's kind of one of the tactics you can use. So humor is a way of diffusing people and be like, oh yeah, that's true. That's funny, and it's funny because it's true. That's why it's funny. Of course, we all know that the evidence that fits with the data, the evidence that is indeed the most elegant, and I mean elegant in the scientific sense of the word, like a physicist would use it, is of course natural selection. My grandmother says all kinds of crazy stuff about this, like, oh yeah, there's people who are saying that evolution's not true, and she's my grandmother, so I can't shake her. But Chris Rock, the comedian Chris Rock, he says I'll never hit a woman, but I'll shake the shit out of her, right? And my grandmother drives me to shake her, basically. Now, I think this is funny. Speaking of which, you see this a lot now on the streets. We're kind of almost de-evolving into these hunched over, bumping into people creatures now with our phones. We're most of us are a bit older than this, but the generation beneath, say me, they're like their thumbs. My grandmother would say their thumbs are going to get bigger for texting, or she says things like, my uncle's really fat, right? Oh, he's just preparing for the next ice age. Like, no, there's no preparation. People have such a misunderstanding of evolution, and my grandmother gets grandfathered in, so I still like her, but if she said things like that to me, she was a stranger, I'd have to shoot her. Okay, so what is this? What is the logic of natural selection? You have to understand what it is, right? People mistakenly think that Darwin had something to say about the origin of the species. Well, because why? That's the title of the book, right? But the book has nothing to do with the origin of species. Right, and this is a problematic title. Now, you could argue that it is in the sense that how species might diverge from others and become new on their own. But it's not really the origin. So the things you have to be really clear on are things like, it explains adaptive function. Like, why is it that we, small things, like, why is our nose shaped the way it is? Right? So one person at least, or a few people say, that it's shaped this way because it drives water down it, not the Panglossian keep the glasses up. Thank you. The aquatic ape hypothesis, if anyone's familiar with this, that we spent at least a portion of our time living in the shallows, and we did a lot of swimming and hunting. This is what Elaine Morgan says. And that our nose is shaped this way to keep water getting in. Now, if you look at other primates, like chimps and New World monkeys and Old World monkeys, their nostrils are like this. So water can actually get in. So it makes a bit of sense. Doesn't mean it's correct, but at least provides you with a functional explanation. And people like functional explanation. Well, what's it for? And that's what evolution provides. It provides the answer to the question, what's it for? These are the ultimate answers. And we'll get to this. And it's something to say about the idea of descent with modification. This wasn't anything new. It was clear that animals changed. It's called microevolution, right? So even some religious people will admit to microevolution, right? That elephants, because people are hunting elephants and taking their tusks, the probability of elephants being born without tusks has gone up because of the selective pressure, the artificial selection that we've exerted upon those wonderful elephants that I like so much. But the idea that through our genes and through our outward behavior, natural selection operates. Right? So I have the right behavioral set to make me a good soccer player, or football, that would be a better term, right? Although I'm confused because footy is not really football, so it's really confusing to me. So anyways.
You'll start a run.
Yeah, okay, so football as in, the round ball game.
Yeah.
Any game, soccer, whatever. So if I'm good at that, and for some reason in the environment I'm in, that gives me a mating advantage, like for some reason all the high school girls love me, then I have a mating advantage, and my good soccer genes, if there are any good soccer genes, which there probably are, will get passed on to the next generation, therefore making generations of people who are better at soccer. It's called directional selection. You're familiar with this, right? The idea that over time the species becomes characterized by the better groups. You have blue-footed boobies, and I love just being upset with boobies in professional talks. Blue-footed boobies, brown-footed boobies. Just the range, right? And they all diverged. And of course, to me, one of the most important parts is its parsimony, right? It allows us to be integrated into the animal kingdom, despite our sense of narcissism about ourselves. It just says, look, we're in line with the rest. When someone says the great apes and people, Franz de Waal actually said this on the Colbert Show. He says, no, we just say that to make people feel better. We are a great ape, right? But we separate ourselves out because of our own self-importance. No, I'm just a primate. I'm not insulted by the cartoons of Darwin. Like, yes, I'm one of those. Yes, I'm a primate. I love it. I have pictures of primates all over my house. I have paintings by primates. I really do. Do you remember the black and white Tarzan, really long time ago? The chimpanzee, her name was Tarzan. Her name was Cheetah, right? Cheetah? Cheetah painted me a picture, and I own it. It's like my prized possession. She died this year, so now it's worth like $5. And yeah, I'm proud to be a primate. So that shouldn't be an insult to you either. Like, yes, that's like saying I'm proud to be a Jonason. Like it's my family. It's where I'm from. Right? And this is the joke here, of course, is that what we seem to have unique is just simply this ability to contemplate our place in nature. The other animals are fine. Yeah, I eat, I reproduce, and maybe I die and things like that. Right? I'm a mammal. That's all we are, right? This one is making the joke. Do you know what the joke here is? That the idea that magically two lizards gave birth to a mammal, right? That there isn't this like that every species, every offspring looks basically just like their parents does. It's not just this poof kind of thing. But people have trouble with this idea. They think it's just right because they think of magic creation and even punctuated equilibrium. Right? Gives people the mistaken impression that there's this almost poof moment, when it's not really a poof moment at all. There is still this gradual progression. All he's saying is, it goes like this. Right? It has this waning kind of process. So we need to really understand evolution much better. And you can talk about sexual selection and people will love this. Because you can explain things like, how does Bill Maher, who's an ugly, short, angry dude, get the beautiful women he gets? He has a brain. He has a huge peacock in his head. He's smart. And women like guys who are smart and funny. Great qualities.
Well,
right?
shit.
Sorry. And people talk about mate choice in a bit. And, while women like guys who are good looking, of course, that he's rich is great. Yeah, being rich helps, for sure. But while we say that, guys don't really care how much money women have. Like, Dave Chappelle makes a joke that, For a guy to get, sex, he has to have a nice house and he has to have a nice car. Also, for a woman can get laid in a cardboard box. Like, men just don't care much. They're not concerned with your house. This is why men have houses like bowerbirds have houses, all decorated. Look at my house. Come over to my house. Come on. So, my friend Jeffrey Miller would say that the human brain and creativity and sense of humor and things like that are the human peacock, right? And this jives with how a lot of people feel, right? That being smart is this attractive quality. It can even compensate for a guy who's physically unattractive, right? If he's kind of looking, like he kind of is, women might see him as more attractive just because he's really funny. I think I like him. And there's been some amazingly silly studies by my academic grandfather, for instance. And I say silly because they're funny. Same guy, okay? And they just change his watch, right? One picture he has a Rolex, the other picture he has just some crap Timex or something. The women find the guy with the Rolex physically more attractive. They actually say they rate him higher because what women are looking for, of course, is slightly different than what men are looking for. Now, unfortunately, the one person I wanted to say that to is not here. He didn't come. So he was a guy who got upset last time at me when I was saying things about sex differences. Anyways, I wrote this talk all for him. And of course, we see this sexual selection issue in nature documentaries. This is most of what I watch. I have all the Foxtel channels, but 2,000 of them are sports, and I don't watch any of them. You see it everywhere. You see this competition in non-human animal species, and of course we know that we see it in people as well. Right? The more attractive guy, the more successful guy has things about him that make him more successful. That males are competing with one another just for the opportunity to mate. Right? It doesn't mean we have access. Those male ungulates with the horns and all that we're fighting, they don't just go along and say, now I got a female. Right? All that does is give them the opportunity. It's like if men here had to fight just to get into a bar, right? We fight, the women are in the bar, we have to fight, whoever wins gets to go in the bar, and then the women can just, no, I don't like him.
Why do gay boys then fall for the same things when there's no reproductive goal?
Why do gay guys fall for physical beauty? Yeah, because men are designed, so men are much more focused on physical beauty than women are. Do you agree with that? Okay? It seems that there's mechanisms in the brain that are different, that turn on sexual orientation and that turn on sexual preference, like what it is, the things that you like. So the things that you want, physical beauty, are separate from sexual orientation. The question of reproduction is essentially irrelevant. We don't go out trying to mate with people and thinking, I want to have her baby and I want to make her pregnant. That's not why we're attracted to people. But when it comes to the functional explanation, it is. Right? So the things that men want all around the board are the same. You find homosexual men's behavior is very similar to what heterosexual men's behavior would be if there weren't heterosexual women holding us back, right? So some really famous studies by a friend of mine show that you take men and women, you bring them to like a campus area. We go out there, for instance, and we go up to every woman. So a guy goes up to every woman. He says three things. He says, will you go on a date with me? Will you go home with me? Will you have sex with me? The woman does the same thing. Now, when a woman does it, I go up to a woman and I say, will you have sex with me? What do you think?
Nope.
Right? I'm in trouble, right? But when a woman asks a guy the same question, do we even have to go over this? Like, he's gonna say yes. And if he doesn't say yes, he's gonna make up some really weak excuses. Like, I gotta run to class, or I have a girlfriend, but can I get your number? Or, like,
I'm married, but things are shaky.
Right. There's a whole bunch of reasons. The point being is that men's sexual psychology is different than women's sexual psychology. Sexual orientation is another module, is another part of the brain that's been. He seems to have to do with part of the hypothalamus, to be honest. And then this was just some gratuitous 1970s porn, essentially. Okay, so. You could, and I know that some of you have been hoping for this, you could also explain some of the tenets of evolutionary psychology. Because if you can make it real to them, right, if you can make it relevant to them, then you can make an impact. Because then they're like, oh yeah, I see how that applies in my life. Like mate preferences. I'll tell you something about mate preferences. I have it already. This is something that troubles some people. Many people believe that beauty standards are cultural contrivances, right? The society has made them up. Well, almost everywhere you go in the world, I mean almost except for this bizarre tribe in Africa called the Hadza, and we have no idea what's going on with them. Men like women who have a certain ratio of their waist to hips. This is not culturally created. This is a biological reality, right? That a woman who has a waist-hip ratio of 0.7 is not only more attractive, but she's more fecund. That she's more likely to have babies. She's more fertile and things like that. And men, we don't say, oh look, let me measure her waist-to-hip ratio. I've never done that to any of my girlfriends. But when I've secretly done it, I found out that I was all in that ballpark. Actually, no, just by being an evolutionary psychologist, whoever dates me has to suffer through this kind of, they know these things now, so they measure themselves. They're like, I'm only 0.69. The smaller you get, the better. Anyways, the point being is that this is one of those findings that people are like, oh wow, right? Another one I'll give you too. I'll give you that one later. So this was something that even Darwin pointed out, as I'm pointing out here to you.
So we measuring your dicks,
No, strangely enough, as most women will admit, penis size is actually not a really fundamental thing. When we show pictures, it has to reach a certain threshold. But having a 10-inch penis, women are like, too much, right? Some people would say, yes, you can be a woman who likes a big penis all you want, but the reality is that when studies are done, and this is not just an N of 2 or 3 in this case, sorry, that what women want in a man's penis is smaller than what men think a woman wants in his penis. Right? Okay. Similarly, when we show women pictures of naked people, naked men and naked women spend a lot less time looking at the genitalia of their opposite sex. So like if I have a picture of a naked man here, and I do an eye tracking study on you women, you won't be like staring at his penis.
How do you know that?
Because they've done eye tracking studies. And most women aren't spending a lot. Not that they don't look. They just don't focus on that. They don't. Men, of course, are like, we're all here, and then we're all here, and then maybe eventually we get over here. But maybe, I said maybe. So Darwin even pointed out that psychology is really should be based on evolution. Why? Because the psychology is just it's a realization that a lot of people have trouble with, is that we seem to think that our psychology is this unique thing that's separate from our biology. Right? It's not. It's part of it. It's part of who we are. It's an offshoot of our brain. It is our brain, right? And our brain is an organ like any other thing, and therefore it has to be under the same pressures of natural selection. Despite what feminist and postmodernist psychologists want to believe, they're wrong. And you can use an example like the calluses, right? There's this functionality to the brain, just like there's a functionality to calluses. Right? That you do a lot of walking out with bare feet. You train martial arts like I do and Sal does. You develop calluses on your feet. Why? Not because you intentionally develop them, but because having a slightly hardened feet means your feet don't get all cut up. Right? So there's no conscious intent. Your feet just develop calluses, and thankfully we don't have bloody feet. The same could be said for our decision-making. That maybe our decision-making abilities are also like this. And we see decision-making abilities of chimpanzees. They can, before they've even gone to a termite mound, they can go find a stick, right? And they can pull off the leaves. And they can go hunt. If anyone knows this, they hunt monkeys, like little bush babies, which are these cute little monkeys like this big, and they find them in the hollows of trees, and they take a spear and right? Of course, this upsets the apple cart too for people, because the idea of Homo habilis is thrown out the window. That what makes us special is that we are tool users. Well, guess what? Capuchin monkeys use tools, and they're not even from the same continent as anthropoid apes, right? They're a New World monkey. That's how you say it, by the way, capuchin. There's that movie with Ben Stiller, and they say capuchin. It's not how you say it. Anyways, so you can explain the psychological mechanisms that will originate from an evolutionary process, right? Things like reproductive ability. How does this promote reproductive success? This is, if anyone's looked at my research, this is one of the major variables I'm concerned with. Like, what are the traits that men and women can have that foster their success, that make them more attractive? Of course, I'm also concerned with the struggle for existence, but this is also something that troubles people, and we'll get to this a little bit more, because it goes against the idea of this romanticized notion that carries over for a lot of people from the Victorian times, right? That animals, lions lay down with lambs and all this kind of stuff. And someone would say, what about that show on Animal Planet where they have like the baby monkey that's living with the leopard? Okay, yeah. But clearly there was something wrong with that leopard, because the leopard would have been better if it just ate the monkey, right? It would have had food in its belly, as opposed to taking care of this non-related species, right? We have this affinity towards animals, so we think that that's natural to take care of dogs. You could make the argument that in particular, well, children are, yes, but cats as well are parasites, right? They don't give us much, right? They take from us. They take food. They take our housing. You can love cats all you want, but they don't have the same relationship with us as dogs do. Yeah? And if you can use pets like dogs and cats to explain these things, people just are like, oh yeah. I have a picture of a pet coming up later. But they get this. People get that there's variability in people, and you can explain the ideas of artificial selection. We can grasp this. People like this. Oh yeah, okay, so all dogs are really just dogs. But a French Bulldog is just as much a dog as a German Shepherd or a Dalmatian or so on and so forth. This idea of artificial selection, and as we know, Darwin did this too, right, with pigeons. Right? It's a good way of explaining to the lay people, look, evolution's all around you. You like dogs? You know why your dog looks like that? You know why your dog, for instance, can't have offspring without artificial insemination, like they have a bulldog or a French bulldog? It's because of artificial selection. Now just think bigger than that. Ask people to be creative.
Peter, how much success have you had with converting people using this method?
Oh, these are just variety of tactics. Have I converted anyone? Well, there was it's being recorded. There was a girl once that I converted, but I think I just converted her temporarily because she wanted to have sex with me. But because she knew that I would kind of be like, no thanks. But no, it's very difficult to convert anyone. Yeah, it is. But it's because you have to get the people who can be converted are the people who are on the fence. You can't get the people who are dogmatic. So Sam Harris makes Sal's hero. Sam Harris makes this great point in his End of Faith book that I think a lot of people miss. The problem with religious people is not the fundamentalists; it's the moderates that are the problem. The moderates are the problem because they pave the way for the crazy shit that fundamentalists say. They give an excuse. Oh yeah, it's okay. Protect people's faith, so on and so forth. This is how we get this in the States. Let's teach the controversy, right? That in high schools they're going to teach creationism next to evolution, like they're somehow equal. I see this all the time. I saw this in an academic talk at my university by a philosophy professor, and I was like, he was like, we have to be understanding of the reasons that people come to faith. I'm like, it doesn't matter what the reasons are. Their premises about life, their ideas about life are simply flawed and inferior to ours, and therefore we have the duty to tell them otherwise. We can't change their mind, but we need to educate them. Because in the States in particular, people are not taught these things. They're intentionally not taught these things. They're given a very vague idea of these things. I suspect it's similar here. They're not easy things to grasp. Right? It's hard to understand this, but we have to inoculate people as soon as we can from the mind virus of religion.
Is that the religious moderates, though, who are creating that situation where you teach the controversy, or is that in practice kind of postmodernists who are in fact secular people in themselves?
Yeah, that's kind of his problem. He has definitely problems with postmodernist, liberal type people who would give excuses, religious apologists. So it is a bit of a postmodernism thing too. Yeah, the religious, he would say that, and I have colleagues that are like this. They are religious moderates. It blows my mind that I'll have like a really ardent feminist colleague who wears a cross around her neck, and I'm like, huh? Like, have you read the Bible at all? Like you're like pro-religion, but you're pro-women too? Like, I don't understand. So Sam Harris's point is all I was trying to bring up is that it's the moderates. People are doing the crazy stuff, like saying we should teach. They're advocating teach the controversy. They're the fundamentalists. But the people who let it pass are the moderates.
No, but it's not. That's the thing. It's the postmodernists, and it's the people who are part of the secular culture, but who lack what probably you would describe as the courage of their own convictions. And then, is it really the moderates? If you ask most religious people, most Christian people in Australia or in Europe or anywhere else, should they teach evolution in schools or should they teach these other bizarre, ridiculous theories? In practice, putting to you that in fact most of them would say, no, actually teach evolution. because they can separate. Well, I mean, maybe it's different in America.
Yeah, I mean, it is true, but we have to be careful to not think that everyone is like the people that we surround ourselves with. So take states like Alabama and Mississippi and Kentucky. These aren't places that the word evolution goes over well. I have a story of a friend who had one of these Darwin fish stickers, he had it on his car, and he was driving through what we call the flyover states in America.
What's a Darwin fish?
You know the Jesus fish? It's the Jesus fish, but it says Darwin inside and it has feet. So it's like a fish becoming a tetrapod. Well, I guess it is a tetrapod, right? The point being, he got pulled over and he got a ticket just, for going 5 miles over the speed limit because of the sticker. So we can easily think that these aren't important issues because we surround ourselves with like-minded people. That's why I joined this group in the first place, right? But we are the fact that there's this few people here suggests that we are the minority. We are willing to stand up for this. I find that a lot of Australians aren't willing to take a strong stand on this. Yes, I am an extremist. I'm an anti-theist. I am an atheist missionary. I will stand at the top of my lungs and scream this stuff if I have to. But I find that in Australia and in the States as well. People are willing to take up that challenge. They're not willing to stand up and say these things that we should be saying. Back to this. With people, you can explain some really cool things that people will like, as I was saying. Like pair bonding. I know this will look like a heart, right? But the pair bonding. Like, love can be explained through evolution, through natural selection. Well, yeah, couples who were in love stuck around longer to keep and made their babies healthier and stronger, and therefore reproduced better, right? They reproduced more babies. They made more babies. They had more offspring down the line. That's all what evolution is about. How many babies do I have that make babies themselves? And so on and so forth. Food preferences, not a particularly controversial thing, but you ask yourself, why are we so fat as a nation, U.S., here, all over the world now? Well, because the foods that were rare in the environment for evolutionary adaptation, so 10,000, 100,000 years ago, fats, sugars, salts, those types of things, they're abundant now, and we eat them like crazy, right? French fries and Skittles and Starburst, and we love them. And we have the good foods, they were abundant, so we have no psychological mechanisms that drive us to want them. But sugar is like, or Chinese food, with all the saturated fat and sugars, we love it, and we gobble it up. Because we have mechanisms in our brain that say, like that, go get that, because it occurred rare in our evolutionary past. So even obesity could be accounted for by this. I don't think a particularly controversial contention, because some claims by evolutionary psychologists are controversial, others aren't, but people always focus on the controversial stuff. I don't think the food stuff is particularly controversial. Another premise of evolutionary psychology, of course, is that these are decision rules that are in our brains, essentially. What do we do with this information? Right? I see an attractive woman. What do I do about it? Right? This information comes in my brain. The decision rule is act on it. Don't act on it. Maybe I can't. Maybe I have a partner at home I have to be good about. Or maybe the decision rule is on this line. Right? Is find a way to just be coy, to be coy about it. Right? So these are one of the important premises that our psychology is shaped, that our decision rules are shaped, that we have heuristic biases. Some people say, why is it that why is a free lunch so hard to turn down? For instance, or why when you go to a cafeteria do you eat more than you would eat if you just had a plate at home? Because abundant food is rare. When you see lots of it, it activates this psychology. It says, food is here, eat. Right? What do lions do? They gorge themselves. They eat you see the belly is just distended with the amount of meat, the gazelle or whatever it is that they eat. Our decision rules are not made for today. Same thing with food preferences. They're made for 100,000 years ago. They're not made. There's a disconnect between what our brain does and wants to do and what our society is really like. Of course, one of the best things, and we've already said this, is the functionality aspect of not only evolutionary psychology but just evolution in general. That these things have a function, right? So Jeffrey Miller again would say that the being funny, the function of being funny, is to attract me. Right? That's why women, for instance, rate as one of the things that they want a guy who makes me laugh. Now, of course, men rate a woman who laughs at my jokes. Right? It's the converse. So as simple as the zebra finch, and to all other sorts of things that you can come up with, there's probably some functional explanation that you can come up with to make people be like, oh, that's interesting. Like I didn't ever thought of it that way. I thought it was just like I just have this. Why is this like this? Why do I have 5 fingers?
Peter, some people say that belief in religion is evolutionary useful.
Yes, these are people like David Sloan Wilson and multi-level selectionists, and they would say that if you are part of a group, and that group is informed by this kind of, that has this dogma that keeps you together, and that therefore provides for individuals to reproduce more, therefore religion has this adaptive value. It could, but taking Dawkins' point, it's the gene that matters. It's my individual reproduction that matters. Yes, I'm part of a group, right? And so I don't want to get into this because this is a bit to the side, but this is one of those contentions in modern evolutionary biology: is can group level selection, does it provide anything unique above selfish gene theory? And this is a huge problem. I'm of course a Dawkins person. I think that no, it's unnecessary, and that's the parsimony problem, right? It's an unnecessary hypothesis. Yes, religion does things, but it does bad things too. But it kills off populations, right? It encourages people to congregate, which we know increases plague rates and disease rates and things like that. So there's all kinds of pluses and minuses that have to be worked out.
Yeah, but I think the question that needs to be answered then is, why is it still here then?
Oh, because it's a great mind virus. It is itself adapted to our brain.
Yeah, but how can something be still here that has no evolutionary value?
Our appendix is still here, and it does nothing for us, right? It's as it is called, an appendix. It's not going to just be expunged because that no longer has a function. Just like our tailbone hasn't been expunged. It's a vestigial organ, you could say, if we actually had reduced the power of religion. But religion, it plugs into psychological mechanisms that are already there, like group-oriented mechanisms and mechanisms for, as we talked about last time, hyperactive agency detection, right? It plugs into your brain in a way that's really sexy. I don't mean sexy like, actual sex. I mean sexy like it appeals to our brain. And this is why for people who are 17, 18, 19, they get indoctrinated into cults, and they get indoctrinated into religions. When I was 19, I met this really pretty girl. I can't remember her name, but she was really pretty. And all my stories are about pretty girls, right? And I was, we're flirting, and I'm like, oh, this is going well, it's going well. And she's like, oh, let's go do something Saturday morning. I'm like, yes, right? So we go do something. She takes me to church. She takes me to some church group. Because at those ages, we're susceptible to those kinds of messages because our brains aren't well formed to think about these things. Just as Dawkins would say it's child abuse to indoctrinate a child at 5 years old, that you're putting that child in a box. They're taking teenagers who are themselves kind of shaky about a lot of things, and in this case using the carrot of sex to bring me along. I was just like, I can't believe I got suckered into this. This is maybe one of the most obvious things about psychology that is important here, is that our brain literally shows evidence of evolution, of the functionality, right? That in the sense that there's different regions of the brain that do different things. Facial recognition parts that are related to motor control, parts that are related to emotion, to memory. It's not to say that different parts of the brain, there isn't some overlap in things, right? Because it is a connected system. But it's clear that when someone's angry, their amygdala lights up. It's not their entire brain that lights up. Their amygdala lights up, or when they're turned on, for that matter. Which, if you didn't know, this is the funny irony, is the same part of the brain that's responsible for sex is also responsible for aggression, right? So it is an interesting twist for the feminists arguing the point that rape is simply about control, because it's obviously a sex act too. But they don't like that because postmodernists, no, it's just power. Well, I can put you in some crazy martial art moves, and I have power over you. I don't need to have sex with you too. There's something else going on there, probably.
So how does that help the case of evolution?
It's called the modularity hypothesis, right? That the brain itself has parts that have been shaped by natural selection. So this part of the brain does this part of the brain does that, and they serve a purpose. The brain isn't just this amorphous thing that just does stuff. It does functional things, and that functional explanation is what evolution provides. Excuse me.
think there's also a good argument there in terms of confronting irreducible complexity and talking about the because you're confronted with a diffuse cloud where everything all magically comes together out of nothing. How do you explain that? It's like 7 assembled in the junkyard. Whereas the modular brain is something you can add intake pieces and it's still...
Yeah, it builds on it, right? So you have in the old thinking, it was you had a reptilian brain, then you had an old mammalian brain, and then you had a new mammalian brain. This is an old, outdated kind of perspective, but the idea is that in evolution, you don't throw it all away and start again. You build on what you have, and that's what the brain literally shows, is that you have the amygdala and the hypothalamus, the stuff right above the brain stem and the spinal cord. And then on top of that, you have new mammalian systems that you find in dogs, for instance. And then you have this stuff here, the neocortex, right? The prefrontal lobes. Yeah. So I've mentioned these terms before, but these gives us some opportunities to make some jokes as well, that we need to understand there is a difference between proximate and ultimate levels of explanation, ultimate being the evolutionary, proximate being, let's call them, we like to call them the standard social science model. And this is the idea that everything about you is learned. It's cultural. This is what I was arguing about with this woman on the radio. This is about happiness. And I was saying that there are good reasons that men and women are differentially happy because of reasons that are related to evolution. She's like, no, I think people are happy. It's cultural. I'm like, what the hell does that mean? Like, where did it come from? That's what evolution provides for us. So you might have some gratuitous, attractive people. If you didn't know, Mila Kunis was rated the most sexy woman in the world just this past week, and I can't say I can't agree more. But Bradley Cooper is no slouch himself, right, ladies? I mean, he's
copies of this lecture online.
Yes, we had 70s porn, and now we have current porn. The point, though, is that there's a lot of talk, and there has been for many years, about women's body image. Right, and then how images in the media make women feel bad about themselves. Well, while that is true, the question is, well, why do those images and not other images make women feel bad about themselves? Right? The content of these pictures, of course, is two sexy people, but women are bothered by the certain dimensions of looks, like things like thinness, like her breasts, like her hair, like her lips. Why? Because women who have those traits have been more successful in mating. And the women who were able to monitor their relative standing among other women were better able at being successful themselves. So women are attuned to those messages, right? That's why this is one of the advantages of an evolutionary hypothesis, is that it's content rich. It starts with content. It says that these are the things that men care about. Women know it, and that's why they're bothered by that. They're not bothered by other things. They're not bothered by a picture of Bradley Cooper. Still a naked person. Still a person in good shape. Their body image isn't affected by seeing an overweight woman. Their body image isn't affected by seeing Bradley Cooper, but it is by seeing skinny, beautiful women, because that gives them information about intrasexual competition. This is my competitor. This is someone that I have to compete with. No, indeed, the evolutionary hypothesis gives you more information about why these things work. Right? Why is it that it should be an issue? Why is it that we should maybe show women a little, not so much overdrawn beauty, so much? These are anomalous people. These are freak beautiful people. Right? If you're not exposed to average people and you think that's average, you're gonna hate yourself. Right? If I don't look like him. I would love to look like him. And if I thought that was average, right? I would hate it, but it's not. So the evolutionary hypothesis not only gives us content information, but it also gives you another reason why you shouldn't like what's going on. This is the same thing. Anyone ever read Craig Palmer and Randy Thornhill's book on rape? It's commonly misconstrued as a justification of rape, but it actually gives another reason why we should hate it. But people everybody misses that reason, because they only hear the part that you objected to what I just said.
Tell us about it, please.
The idea being that rape is a potential adaptation for males. Right? That some males are excluded from mating, and that as essentially a last-ditch effort in terms of mating, that rape can be adapted, as in pregnancy can occur. So the objection to this is, of course, are through some people through the roof. We find rape in non-human species, right? So, well, why is it occurring there too? It seems to be that there's at least some reproductive advantage. And now this is extremely controversial and it's going to hurt some of your feelings. The probability of conception when you have consensual sex is about 3%. The probability of conception when you were raped is 8%.
Why is that?
That we don't know. That we haven't worked out. But 5% more.
There's a U.S. congressman that said that...
because it's U.S. Congress doing the rape?
No, this is
U.S. congressman said that rape won't have consequences because the women's body will reject the rape.
Yeah, this is it's true that the woman's reproductive tract is a minefield for sperm. I mean, it is essentially designed to kill sperm, but it's designed to not kill it, to select out the crap sperm, the weak sperm. This is sperm wars, right? The idea that there's actually a battle going on in the woman's body, sometimes with more than one male sperm, about who gets the prize. So this is like rape and body image. These are controversial topics that you can explain. Look, the reason why women are bothered by Mila Kunis is potentially because of these things. Now, men don't tend to be as bothered though about the body image stuff. What men tend to be bothered a little bit more is status. We have a show in the States called what is it called now? Cribs. It's called Cribs. Do you ever hear Cribs? You go to like famous people's houses and you see all their stuff, their cars and their and this has the same effect that looking at beautiful women does to women on men. When guys go over other guys' houses and we see that they have a bigger television than us, like, I gotta get a bigger TV now. This is penis fencing, right? This is competition, right?
This is cars and big dogs.
Cars and big dogs, and this is the information that matters to men, right? Why does it matter to men? Men who have more status and more wealth have more success in mating. Right? So because we have that, someone already said Bill Maher has money, this gives us an advantage. And we're attuned to those signals. But wait, I'm not as great as I thought I was. Damn it. Because all the men in our groups of men, we all secretly think that we're the alpha of the group. Right? Even if we're not the alpha of the group. And this is why you see for a lot of male, especially young male Australian men, there's a lot of like homoerotic wrestling fighting going on. Because they're trying to like work out the dominance hierarchy. Okay. Now we know this one, right? This is the design problem, right? If something is made, if something looks designed, there must be a designer. I was approached by someone in New Mexico when I was getting my PhD, and they said, "Oh, it's a really nice T-shirt." I was like, "Oh, this guy's got good style." I thought he was complimenting me. It's a great approach. And he was like, "Oh, who designed it?" And I'm like, whatever, Affliction or something. Definitely not Ed Hardy. For those of you who know what that is. And I felt myself getting caught in this trap. I'm like, oh no, I just got it. And then he's like, well, if your T-shirt was designed, wasn't the universe designed too? This is backwards logic, right? The laws of nature are descriptive. They're ex post facto descriptive laws, not a priori descriptive laws. And this is something we need to be able to deal with and say it like that and explain it to them like, yeah, you're right. Someone did make a T-shirt. But the laws of nature aren't the same. Like, we're working them out. We didn't write them down and say, here you go, algorithm. It didn't work that way. And of course, as you know, that's well addressed in The Blind Watchmaker. This design problem, like the bird was designed to do X, Y, and Z, it's partly because it's a language problem. It's difficult to talk about these things without using active language. I'll read it to you if you can. Right? It says, "And now, Randy, by use of song, the male sparrow will stake out his territory, an instinct common in the lower animals." Right, this, of course, reveals anthropocentrism, because obviously the fences, all is being staked out. But I'm using it also to the point that design is a slippery word. And one of the key things in science, and educating anyone about science, is we have to agree on terminology. And if you watched Dawkins the last time he was here, I think, and he was having some debate with like a bishop or a cardinal or something. There was this kind of, people were laughing at Dawkins when he was trying to get the point across about definitions. We have to agree on a definition. What does this mean? And then we can talk about it. That's just the first step. If you don't agree on definitions, you'll never get anywhere. There's a joke I like to make, that human beings are really concerned with the 5 Fs. All animals are concerned with the 5 Fs. Fighting, fleeing, feeding, Oh, it's 4 Fs, and finding mates. and people don't like this, of course, because it reduces people to their baser instincts. But in some ways, you can link almost everything we do to these things. Why does Barack Obama want to be president, to be dominant? Because he's got Michelle to impress. Right? What else can I do to impress my girl? I'll be president. And she's probably like, sure, you can be president. And then he's like, I'll show you. And he does. Why do men have loud stereos? Why do men do this MMA bullshit where they beat the crap out of each other and have cauliflower ears? Mixed martial arts, Sal. Whatever you want to say, why do men get their PhDs? Make fun of myself. Why do men get their PhDs? Yes, of course, because I like being smart. But I'm not just smart to be smart. I'm smart because it gets me somewhere. I'm smart for a reason, just like everybody else is. There's a reason why we're doing it. We might not be aware of those reasons. We might not be doing it. I didn't say, hey, I really want to date women who are really smart and atheists and so on and so forth. So I'm going to get my PhD and I'm going to go through hazing for 7 or 8 years, and then I'm going to be a junior faculty and have to do stupid committee work. No, of course you wouldn't. You'd be like, no, but your brain says sex and. As I said before, the rest of the animals have got this down because they're not sitting around like the chimp isn't sitting around like eating stuff thinking like, what is the meaning of life? What is, like singing a song from Monty Python or something. We are, and this is our problem. We have to kind of deal with this. Okay? As I used the appendix before, use examples from the human body. The appendix, for instance, if you want to talk about symmetry, right? So why is it people's faces and bodies are symmetrical, but most of their organs aren't symmetrical? Right? Well, there's no selective pressure to have pretty, nicely designed organs, but there is selective pressures to have pretty faces, that being symmetrical faces. So if you take what people know already and use it as a launch pad to get them to the next step, because most people are lazy, they're intellectually lazy. They don't want to think the next step. They don't want to take the next step. So this is my trouble with my grandfather, right? As I said earlier, he's one of these people who can believe in God and evolution at the same time. Like, well, take the next step, Grandpa. If all of this stuff explains reality, and you watch these wonderful physics shows, why is not the next logical step the exclusion of this miraculous hypothesis, as Victor Strenger would call it, right? Why would you not reject? He doesn't go that next step, and most people don't go one more step beyond anything. So I want to get a French bulldog. This is a French bulldog, and the corporate strata management won't let me get one. They're being I don't know, pedantic. Let's talk about people's preferences for beautiful faces. Why is this dog so cute? Why are babies so cute?
Hang on, that dog is not cute.
They have what's called pedomorphic displays. They have youthful features, big eyes, big ears, and it makes us just want to squeeze them like this, right? They're adorable. That's why if you look at adult wolves aren't very cute. Adult wolves are pretty vicious looking, but adult dogs, like when this guy grows up to be about an inch bigger, he will still be cute because we've artificially selected for these cute features. Babies, cute features. What did those cute features do for us? It made it so we didn't kill the babies when they were crying, waking us up at 3 a.m. for those of you who have children. You didn't shake. I mean, obviously people still shake their babies. We see this on the news. But a cute baby, and it bothers a lot of people, but more attractive children are abused and neglected less. The better looking you are as a child, the more love. Everybody wants to touch you. There's a whole Seinfeld episode about this, right? They go into the person's house and it has an ugly baby. Because everyone thinks their baby is beautiful, but not everyone else agrees that your baby is beautiful. So French bulldogs are cute like little babies are cute. So we protect them. And that's one of the hypotheses about the evolution of dogs, is that they parasitized us. They tricked us into loving them and feeding them. And we do their bidding. Now there are dogs that people carry around in purses. We win these women with these huge purses. Like, you just put a little chihuahua in there. This is very LA. I know. I've been being an asshole for so long. I figured I'd put up some nice pictures. All animals have a nature. They have a personality, for instance. Elephants have a nature. I think this is a male bull elephant. Right? Koalas, to be a gratuitous, local example. Chimpanzees, their natures give us insight. Well, a chimpanzee is very impulsive. People are kind of impulsive. Chimpanzees are warlike. They go on raiding parties. Guess who also goes on raiding parties and kills people? What do you do? It makes people oh, okay, chimps do that too. Because people are very ignorant about biology and about zoology in particular. Like the idea that human beings are the only species that there's homosexuality. It's just patently wrong. But people think that that's true. And if you can show them examples about the behavior, I'll give you an example. If you didn't know about your lovely koalas, almost all of them have syphilis. Chimpanzees, almost all of them have SIV, simian immunodeficiency virus. Where did we get HIV from? Not from having sex with them, from eating them, from the bushmeat that they eat. Someone cut their hand accidentally, they cut the chimp, gets in and it spreads, so on and so forth, right? Because people are so ignorant about it, and they don't even go to zoos, for instance, knowing about zoology is very useful, because people like these are called charismatic species. People like cute animals. Oh yeah, I like you. Now, if you try to explain this with a shark, they might feel a little differently about it. I mean, I literally have a phobia of sharks, so that might not work out. Do you know the difference between a phobia and a fear? Right, so a phobia is an irrational fear. So if I'm in a dark pool, I think there might be a shark in there. My grandparents have a pool, right? In-ground pool. At night it's dark. There's even a screen above it. In my mind, I can conjure up stories that they were flying a shark in a gurney over top, and it dropped and it fell into the water. This is ridiculous. My ex and I went scuba diving, and it was very murky, and it was I wanted to see a shark, but I knew I would have pissed my wetsuit if I saw one. It would have been great, but so their natures. They have great natures. Not great natures. They're great. Of course, no one's really confused about the fact that the main obsession of most animals is, food and sex. Right? Is the fight for mates and the fight for access to food. And this is, of course, they're making a tie-in. Right? The male gets the first part and the female gets the second. But mating is hugely important. These are two male horses fighting for access. Animals do this, and if you can get them to be at least to be of course we're an animal, yeah. And I think a lot of people are okay with the idea that we're animals, but then they go the next step farther. Well, God put something special in us. He touched the water and things changed or something. That narcissism is quite interesting, because I think a lot of people would say that we are the narcissists, right? That because we object religion, which they think creates humility, which of course it doesn't do that at all. It does the literal opposite of that. They think we're the narcissists. We think we're part of the entire, ecosystem. They think they're special and they have the right to eat all the animals and after Noah and all that kind of stuff. I wish I was like Sam Harris and Christopher Hitchens. I could just quote the Bible. I've never been able to do that. Anyways, you could do what I call selfish relevance. Selfish relevance is simply talk about the things that people are already interested in. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. When people say, what do you study? That's what I say. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Which is basically what I study. Not much for drugs, to be honest. That's my own personal experience. But the other parts I study. Social conflict. These things matter to people. Mating. People. I've been very depressed by other professors that they, when they see a talk on, say, mate preferences or mating or anything like that, they're in the back falling asleep. They think the question doesn't even make a difference. Who cares? Why are we still talking about this? Why are we still talking about this? It's the major obsession of everyone their entire lives. Even if you're 60, you're concerned with, is my mate happy? Maybe I can get a better mate. All these kinds of questions are even there. If you're going on the market when you're 60 for the first time, the way you behave is just like you did when you were 20. The cute little names and the cute tickle name and all this kind of stuff. You adopt the same pattern. Whatever, aggression, cooperation, all these kinds of things. You could use thought experiments. I'm not that smart, so I'm not very good at these, but they are useful. Get people to think about these things. Get people to if you can get someone to come to the revelation on their own, it's so much better than to have to browbeat them into it, right? If they're like, oh, wait a minute. An ex-girlfriend of mine, I now call her Heroin Heather, but her name's Heather. I'll tell you that story later when we're drinking. Heroin Heather, she took a class in psychology when she was, say, 18, 19, neuropsychology. And she's like, she goes to the professor, she's like, how do you still believe in God after you know all this stuff about how the brain works? And he's just like, I don't. And there was this huge revelation to her, and she was almost led there, but it was her. She took that last step, right? So all we can do really is just, here's all the evidence. What questions do you have? When someone says to me, I'm agnostic, I say, well, what are you unsure about? Right? Like, why do you lack wisdom? If you didn't know, that's what agnostic means, lacking wisdom. Right? Gnostic, gospel, so on and so forth, right? So the person who says they're agnostic is really saying, yeah, I lack wisdom. And it's also like a hedge betting. Hedge betting? Bed hedging. It's like I'm riding the fence. Like, no, the evidence is very clear. Get on the right side, right? But that's what I say. When someone's like, oh, I'm not sure. I have had this contention here before. So, let's imagine that you were a gene. And your mission, if you choose to accept it, Tom Cruise, is to increase your replicative success. You want to make more of you. Well, what might you do? Well, you might make a vehicle. You might construct an external vehicle to transport your body around, to reproduce yourself, to find more mates. Not all species do this, of course. Some stay still. Sponges, for instance, right? They mass spawn. They just release all their gametes. Right? There's a big soup of sperm and egg. But other than plants as well, although sponges are animals, I think. Most animals get around. They ambulate. They find mates. They find food. Things like that. Influence the ways in which your reproduces itself. Right? So create biases and dispositions. Right? Which are the good mates to mate with? Which are the ones that are going to make the most copies of me? What are the fertile women? What are the fertile men? What are the men who are going to stick around to take care of this baby that's like it's a parasite. There's really no other way to put it. Anyone have kids? Like, I mean, you could, in a cynical way, children are parasites, right? They're constantly taking from you. I want Xbox. I want, whatever. And of course, you can aid in the survival and reproduction of others with similar bodies as yours, with the bodies that have your genes, like your relatives. This is what we do. We help our kin find mates. We help them not mate with the wrong person. As opposed to say, ooh, I don't know about that guy. This is a joke that I learned, not a joke, but a reality I learned a long time ago, is that when you as a guy, right, so you date the girl, but you marry the family. Right? So you can like her and, oh, she's great, fantastic. If the family doesn't like you and you don't like the family, it's a non-starter. Right? Because they're going to be undermining your ability every step of the way. They're in the back of their head like, husband's such an ass. Like Marge Simpson's sisters, right? Constantly on her about how bad Homer is. And Homer is horrible, but she loves him like a fat kid loves cake.
When you phrase the question that way, aren't you afraid that
Which question?
What would you do if you were a gene?
Oh yeah.
Are you not afraid you're opening the door to teleological thinking?
Well, this is a common criticism. So when you have an outcome of mating, right? It's not, this isn't a circularity, right? It's that the purpose is mating, right? There is an outcome at the end. It's not just the genes are good because they made more offspring, right? Is that teleology? Is that what you're saying?
Well, the implication of purpose of design.
Yeah,
that the genes have a purpose when there is no purpose.
Right.
I spent half my time convincing people that evolution doesn't have a purpose.
Yeah, well, we think in active ways. That's how we describe it to students. We don't know how to describe it without active words, so it's easy for us to confuse them. But I don't see how it's necessarily a teleological problem, because the gene's purpose is not to reproduce. The gene, as you said, lacks a purpose, and therefore there is really no teleology at all, because you don't imbue any kind of psychology to the gene.
It's just the mind view you're bringing forth when you say, imagine if you were a gene. People view themselves as causal agents. They view themselves as patterns.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, maybe this thought experiment will be better, right? what do men like in mates and what do women like in mates, and their long-term mates. And when people list these things, they tend to list similar things. But when we ask them to prioritize, say, what can you not do without? What's the number one thing? Then we find differences in people. So women tend to prioritize things like social status and kindness, but men tend to prioritize things like looks. It's not that they don't like the other things too, it's that when push comes to shove, the first thing they want is a good-looking girl. And if she's attractive, if she's smart and kind and sense of humor and all those other things, then we're like, kudos. Women do it a little bit differently, right? As we talked about with the watch example. But I think someone had a question back there.
The question is that regardless of the point where you can convince someone to believe in evolution versus the intelligent design, how does that solve their fundamental problem, which they have right now as part of religion, that what happens after a time? Because I think, as you said, it's hard to convert, but I think the fundamental issue that, in my own experience, I have faced, even if they are happy to let go the idea of the originalists, I think the safety net, in a way that there is a tomorrow after they die, I think this is one of the most difficult part.
Yeah.
And of course, with all the these tactics and all that, it's very hard. Those things does not address that particular concern.
Yeah,
and I think
you're right.
Where I've had some discussions and what they say, I'm better off siding with the fact that what if there is a hell,
Yeah, well, this is, the
hell just...
But as Christopher Hitchens would say, that's a horrible reason to believe in God and believe in heaven.
Thing they have,
a horrible reason. Right, this is God of the gaps, right? Is that the last thing they have left? Yeah, I would think, at least this is the way it is for me, this knowledge should lead you to the question of death is not only inevitable, but the question of whether there's life after death is an irrelevant non-question, and it's excluded by this knowledge. That, to me, religion creates a drug addiction in your brain, or a need. It creates a hole in you that only religion can fill. Like, children don't contemplate, like, where am I going to be when I die? But religion makes you think that there could be this thing. Like, our actual experience in life is things die, and that's the end. That's what we actually see. But religion creates this mythology to make us feel better about our fears of death. And it's serving its own. It's a drug pusher.
Like my son, he's 10-year-old, and he's fine with everything. But this question is something that he could really be asking. But then what will happen? And I think if I hadn't let him be indoctrinated with the religion, but he's happy that we paying he laughs at the gods and all that shit. It's fine. But then again, he lives in a place in society where he thinks.
Yeah.
And people might ask him.
Yeah, I don't know how to deal with this one. As someone who doesn't have children.
I know it's not part of the topic.
As someone I have friends who have children and raised them as atheists, and there's probably better people to ask, and maybe some people here have better insights about that. But I don't know how to deal with some of those questions.
Recently on the internet about it too. Stardust is one of the things that say in the society do that.
The people you become stardust. Ooh. That's rather romantic too. That's just like another type of romantic. What does Richard Dawkins say? Please.
He says that if you don't believe in life after death, then it frees you up to live this life to the fullest. That's the short answer.
And also, we've
that's fine. But the thing is that you're trying to remove the blanket.
Tell that to a 10-year-old.
The blanket, because I want to cover them and provide me with some other alternative.
Well, not to use like House as a philosopher or something, but he says the same thing. You only get one go, so make it count.
Make every day count.
Right, so make every day count.
That's all I can
Right, that's why we're doing some coke and some drugs later.
I'm sticking with you.
The convenience of the heaven was always that you fight for me, whether I am Christianity or Islam or anything. You fight for me. You die. You get better rewards if you die for me than you would otherwise. And that is the whole purpose of heaven. It serves no other purpose.
Well, if you remove
not to cut us off, but I still have 3 more tactics to go through. So let me finish this so we can go have food. So you could, as I have to often do with audiences, with my students, is offer Surgeon General's warnings because of anyone know who this is? Rousseau. Because of the idea that this noble savage idea right? It's again, if you look at my research, I study the darker aspects of human nature. I study the adaptive values and potentials of things like psychopathy and narcissism and Machiavellianism, these types of things. So fighting and all these things that we see all the time is, you know what, it's we have to warn people, say, listen, you know, people have a good side, yeah, but they also have a bad side too. It's like the whole thing where people focus on the good parts about, well, God makes sunrises and, you know, beautiful things like that. Well, what about the kid in Africa who gets the parasite that tunnels into his eye, right? That God made that too, right? So he somehow we forgive those parts, but not. Right? So it's the same problem here. So we have to be honest about our nature, and people are a little bit chuffed about this. Conflict is everywhere. Sexual conflict is everywhere. We tend to think of relationships as inherently harmonious. They are anything but that. They're extremely contentious, and when they're harmonious, it's just because the conflict has kind of somehow been resolved and been worked out in some way. But it starts with conflict. That men and women have different desires in relationships and different tendencies. So all these things are ways in which we can have conflict. So men can be bothered by the fact that their girlfriend have same-sex friends. Well, what do same-sex friends do? They come out with us. We don't like them having opposite-sex friends too. Like my ex-girlfriend having an opposite-sex friend. Well, because that's a potential guy that she might move on to. Right? So there's all kinds of reasons, and this was one of Darwin's main points, is that life, whether it be physical, like the physical life, like he focused on, or psychological life, like this, it's rife with conflict. It's not harmonious. It's not beautiful and pretty, like Victorians wanted to believe. It is conflict, and that's one of the fundamental premises of Darwinism. Another warning you might give, this is what I wrote for this gentleman who's not here, but men and women are just different when it comes to things, in a lot of ways when it comes to sex. In particular sex. No one's claiming that men and women are fundamentally different. Right? And this is where people lose the thread. Men and women are mostly the same. But where men and women face different adaptive challenges, recurrent adaptive challenges, this is where we predict and find that men and women are different. Like the idea about men's willingness to engage in casual sex, like you get a text message from a girl, right? Yes, as opposed to the woman, no, or throw away creep, or I'm calling the cops, or whatever she happens to do. People miss this point, that it's, mental psychologists are not saying that men and women are from a different planet. We're saying that no, just at certain things we face different challenges, and those different challenges led to differences. And you see this in not just people. You know, why is it that the male moose is, the male deer has the big antlers and the female doesn't, for instance, right? It's sexual selection. It's females were like, oh, I like those big antlers. Now, anyone know about the Irish elk? Right? You know why it went extinct? The antlers got so big on the males through sexual selection, through females saying, I like big antlers, that they couldn't fit through the trees anymore, and the species essentially mated itself to death because of female choice. Right? So the species died, thank you ladies, because of females being like, I want bigger and better. And that's why they're no longer with us. Okay. Some of the problems here, if someone asks you about what are these problems that males face that women don't face, things like paternity uncertainty. Guess what? I don't know for sure that the baby that my wife has is my baby. Therefore, I'm going to have for men who are concerned about the sexual behavior of their mates, they're going to do better in the reproductive game, because I'm not going to be cuckolded, right? I'm not going to be taking care of someone else's baby. Conversely, you find that stepchildren are also more likely to be abused than non-stepchildren, than native children. Well, because they're not my children, so I don't have any strong tie to them other than the fact that I want to have sex with their mother.
Apparently, they're hundreds of times more likely.
Hundreds? Yeah. I mean, I have no problem admitting it. My stepmother used to beat the crap out of my brother-in-law, and she didn't do. She treated her sibling, her children, as what did she say? She'd say, "You are the spawn of my loins," or the seed of something really just, like, don't say that, right? But it was complete nepotistic favoritism for her genes over her dog genes. So there's all kinds of others. I won't go through all these because I want to finish fairly quickly. We talked about this already. The amount of time it takes for a man to be ready to have sex is a lot quicker than it takes for a woman to be ready. Now, indeed, most couples don't actually wait till 6 months like the woman here is predicting. they find a middle ground, usually about the third date. I call it the 3-date rule. And it's because men and women have competing interests that they have to work out a solution to. So the guy wants to have sex immediately, right? And in part because it's a good indicator to us about whether you actually like us, right? Put your money where your mouth is, if you will. And the woman wants to be like, well, wait a minute, so to speak, thank you. And the woman wants to be like, well, is he going to stick around? Is this a good guy? So she wants to delay. Right? And in reality, what happens is, of course, in the middle of the two.
Are we allowed to quote that chart?
Please. I'll give you it's Buss and Schmidt, 1993.
No, I'm just hoping to take a photo C.
I will send this to you if you would like. Some humor now. You can use humor. I use this all the time, partly because I love stand-up comedy. I'm going to show you some stand-up comedy in a second. But you see this in The Simpsons. Everywhere you go. I mean, you can't see it very well because this screen is not as big as I'd like it to be. But give me the laser pointer.
That's another thing.
Yeah, there you go. So we have things like the headache generator in women, right? Right? We have the sex initiator gland, which is really tiny. Talk and more talk. Shiny things and diamonds, olfactory. So,
the women you know, man.
Bill Morris. No, this is a characterization. This, of course, is not true, right? Women are interested in sex. The joke is ironing, of course, ironing. TV and remote control addiction center. Right? We gotta have the remote. We have to have control. Is how I used to. My ex-girlfriend used to call it control. Yeah. Okay. Now, thankfully, lots of stand-up comedians do routines about this stuff. Now, I don't want to take too much of your time up, so I'm only going to show you one of them. But I'm going to tell you a story about, well, it's one 10 minutes and the other's like 5, so I want to get us to food sometime reasonably. I keep going?
Okay.
All right, let's watch them both then. Or we'll watch at least some of them. I'll tell you the story after we see this one. If it even works.
I want to start with men's brains. All right. Now, men's brains are very unique. Men's brains are made up of little boxes, and we have a box for everything. We got a box for the car. We got a box for the money. We got a box for the job. We got a box for you. We got a box for the kids. We got a box for your mother somewhere in the basement. We got boxes everywhere. And the rule is, the boxes don't touch. When a man discusses a particular subject, we go to that particular box, we pull that box out, we open the box, we discuss only what is in that box. Alright? And then we close the box and put it away, being very, very careful not to touch any other boxes. Sorry, my Catholic upbringing got in there for a minute, but I wanted a Catholic, but I went to Catholic school when I was little. I had a nun who taught in hell like she was born and raised there. I mean, I'll never forget it. But it did me good, actually. It was a good thing. Now, women's brains are very, very different from men's brains. Women's brains are made up of a big ball of wire. And everything is connected. Everything. Money's connected to the car, the car's connected to your job, and you're connected to your mother, and you're connected to everything. that superhighway. And it's all driven by energy that we call emotion. It's one of the reasons why women tend to remember everything. Because if you take an event and you connect it to an emotion, it burns in your memory and you can remember it forever. The same thing happens to men. It just doesn't happen very often because, quite frankly, we don't care. Women tend to care about everything. It's just love.
Alright, so you get the point. So, obviously, again, a characterization, right? Men and women's brains are mostly similar. If you take them out of their skulls, they look the same and they work basically the same. But there are seriously some important differences about things like how the hemispheres are connected, for instance. So one of the reasons why there's that connected to everything effect is because women's brains the hemispheres are more densely connected than men's are. So whenever a woman has an experience, the emotions that go with that experience are more well encoded than it is for men. So men can have simply a completely emotionless experience. Even the simplest thing can have an emotional impact on women because of the way their brains are connected. So you could say that this is funny because it's true, right? And to a degree, I would agree. But people still are bothered by it. And I was asked, I got contacted by a science writer named Faith Lamb. And she wanted to, talking about the sexual double standard, about the evolutionary origin of the sexual double standard. And I said, well, I live here in Australia, so we have to wait to find a time that we could actually talk because of the time difference and all that kind of stuff. But why don't you watch this first? And you'll get some idea of what evolutionary psychologists have to say about this. Or at least what I'll have to say.
Every single time a man sleeps with a lot of women, he's called a stud. But if a woman sleeps with a lot of men, she's called a slut. And people think this is unfair. Nah. It's completely fair. And I'll tell you why, right? Because it's fucking easy to be a slut. It's fucking hard to be a stud. To be a stud, you have to be witty, charming, well-dressed, have nice shoes and a fake job. To be a slut, you just have to be there. There are fat, ugly sluts out there. There are no fat, ugly studs. I've met slutty dwarfs. I've never met a stud dwarf. Maybe in their own realm, but none that have crossed over to our realm. And when I say sluts, I don't mean that as a bad word. I love sluts. I need them in my life, sluts. They're the best. I want what everyone wants in this world.
You want a little more?
I want to fall in love. I want to get married. I want to have kids. I want to be happy ever after. But the problem is, I've done this job for so long and fucked so many sluts that I can't go back to nice girls. Because nice girls are shit in bed. So, I never heard back from this science writer. She didn't want to talk to me after I sent her this. But this is, as raunchy as it is, this is essentially what evolutionary psychology would predict about the sexual double standard. He's right on about this. It's exactly on target. The last two.
Wait, why do men then because a lot of men do watching women have sex with other guys?
There is some evidence to suggest that when men watch porn with heterosexual porn, it increases sperm production, and they think it's a sperm war kind of thing. It turns them on, no, I'm going to take her and I'm going to inseminate her. And this seems to be a niche part of the swinger community as well. Yeah. You see your wife some guy has sex with, and then you come in second, so to Pun.
Is it what's the sect at dawn?
Yes, that is a rather hated book. But yes, Sex at Dawn. He does have some interesting things to say. But there is a book that counteracts or countermands pretty much everything that he has to say in that book that came out. But
essentially his premise is you're just so in love with chimpanzees and you ignore bonobos.
Oh no, I think bonobos are fantastic. Yeah, I think bonobos are fantastic. And I agree, there is a bit of an unfortunate kind of focus on aggression as a result of chimpanzees being the predominant model. But we are a horny, angry group of people, species, I should say. So last two, okay? And then we'll go eat or talk about something, I don't know. Explain the heuristic value. I didn't put these in particular order, but the heuristic value. If nothing else, practically speaking, pragmatically speaking, it does things for you. It's generative, as in it makes predictions. It makes more predictions. A good theory has to make more predictions. A good theory explains available evidence. So explain the available evidence and make more predictions. They're extremely useful. And it talks about, and it allows us to talk about things that are extremely important to people and extremely important to today's world. Like, why is it that we have these riots? Why is it that, for instance, it's young boys in these Muslim riots? Right? I don't mean young boys like 8. I mean disenfranchised males can't get women. Right? They're excluded from access. That's going to make any guy mad. Right? You find this in gorillas. Right? Male gorillas fighting with one another because they don't have access to mates. Okay? The last one that I am horrible at least the first part, not the second part. Just be like, we don't know everything. But this shouldn't mean that we act like our knowledge isn't valuable or that our information isn't correct. Right? Liberals and scientists have this tendency to kind of to equivocate and to be, well, this exception and that exception, and in this study it showed this, and under this condition it showed that. We have to not only be honest, but we have to have some integrity to ourselves as well. We have to stand up and say, this is nonsense. Kind of what we want from a lot of American politicians to stand up about things, or maybe even Australian politicians, like about maybe marijuana or whatever. Like, why can't Obama stand up and be like, no, I don't believe in God, right? Of course I don't, but I have to act like I do because I can't get elected in America if I don't, right? I have to put on a show. Now maybe he believes in God or not, right? There were some things he said though that I'm like, maybe. The point being is like, stand by your convictions, the courage of your convictions, as he said. And this is one of those convictions I think we need to take, is that there is no God, so to speak, and here's what I can replace with your mythology. I can replace it with science, with stuff that you can observe, things that you can go out and see on your own, and it makes sense. That's so great. It makes sense. All right, thank you.